It's been about 2 weeks, and I have a new update for you. It's been a little challenging trying to make videos while developing the game. I've been really deep into solving some difficult technical challenges with the project, and I'm really excited to show you guys the result. So one thing you might immediately notice is the increase in the game's visual fidelity. This is a part of solving a technical challenge that I had related to how I create the game's tile maps. Also, I wanted to improve how the character has been communicated. I've had some playtesters think that the character was farting, which is not the vibe I'm looking for. I'm sure maybe for other games it might be a good way to communicate things, but for my game it's not exactly the impression I want to give. And so I've been building out this little test room to test out just what it feels like to explore and move around as the character, interact with the unique like smoke cloud generation system that I have. From my experience with playtesting this new environment, players have been having a lot of fun, toying with this mechanic, which has been very encouraging. When thinking about building out rooms in the world, I have been inspired by this video I found by this lady named Jess Codes, who explains the system called a dual grid tile map system. Now, typically when you build tile maps, which are basically the little squares that you see that build up the world, you would need 47 different tiles for each terrain set in order to make sure all the unique connections would work. Now, that's a fair bit of art, and it's not. I'm working on this in my spare time, and this is something I didn't want to, invest too much into because I want to have unique worlds, but also I want to make sure this game gets finished in a timely manner. So I took an attempt at implementing the dual grid system as explained in this video. So part of making a dual grid tile map is enforcing the shape of the tile map in such a way that we can encode, make sure it renders out all unique connections. So this shape right here is a 4x4 grid of tiles, which when composed together can make roughly any shape possible. And so I ended up pulling up a library as well as talking to some people in Discord. It took me a little bit to wrap my head around this conceptual model, but once I got it, it really, leveled up the game and made producing art and levels a much friendlier process. So once I've made the shape, I can then layer on a texture. This texture right here is a bit of a photo edited version of some stock photography. In this case, it's a rock wall that I have down-resed and put some filters on to make sure the contrast reads well. And in the game, you may have seen, I think it's a very kind of strange and dreamy, but also a very pleasant feeling. I really like this sort of down-resed, almost film grain kind of look. I think it really adds to the game. And going back to the game, you can see on the screen how the tiles are composed together in a unique recombination of those shapes, and anything that was red is now replaced with that nice little texture that we saw earlier. The other thing you may have noticed on the screen is how as the player shoots their cloud smoke, tiles slowly reveal to the player, so they're able to sort of build their own path through the level. This screen has maybe some less tiles than the other one, so there's maybe a little more for the player to try to go and explore on their own to figure out really where you need to go. This was a bit of a challenging problem to solve. It took me a fair bit to do and involved working with these things called shaders, which talk to the GPU or the graphical interface of the system in order to update the coordinates. So you can see the map here, and you see all of our tiles, and you'll notice this sort of magenta pink color that is sprayed around the map. Those show me pre-configured visible tiles, so I can sort of guide the player in a way that I want to. And sort of what I ended up doing is I ended up um, uh, generating this image here to show which tiles are visible and which ones are not. And this is saved to the file system and then sent to the graphical card, which then updates the map. So whenever the player updates new tiles, this image right here, each pixel represents one tile, will update the visual fidelity, the visual transparency of that tile, which worked out quite elegantly. It took some figuring out to do, but this system has allowed me to make as many textures as I want and make any tile set I want visible or invisible in the construction of building levels, which I think is going to give me a lot of potential in building out the game in the way I want. This sort of system is sometimes referred to as a fog of war. This is something you might see in real-time strategy games like StarCraft, where there is fog over the map that is used to then hide where the player has and hasn't been in order to find bases and stuff. And I thought this would be a unique mechanic to add to my game to allow you to sort of see where the player has and hasn't been before when exploring the world. And I think too, like hiding some of the map but showing just what was needed helps make the world feel a little bit bigger, which might save some time developing levels, since I'm planning on hand building all of these levels myself. No plans for any sort of procedural generation at this time. And yeah, I think this effect looks quite nice. I think it gets the job done in a unique way, and I think having it tile-based too gives it a sort of almost glitchy, almost artificial vibe, which I think adds to the dreamy experience I'm trying to create. Some people I'd like to thank that helped make this game possible is the friendly folks in Aramis's Discord. Aramis is a YouTuber that is also a game dev and has created this really wonderful community of people, sharing their projects and their updates. And there's been a lot of helpful people. I want to shout out Zeong Fang in particular, who helps wrap my head around this dual grid concept. They were a huge help. Another group that was quite helpful is my local Seattle Godot Discord. There was another person that was helpful in helping me think through the shader process in terms of building out the Fog of War system. I believe the person's name was Kyle. That helps me out. So thank you, Kyle, for your idea for building that image. It works out quite nicely. One other thing I want to go over before I finish out this video is initially my intentions for February were to build out 16 rooms. My thinking in terms of developing a game was that I would make the rooms of the world and that the space of the world would then inform what mechanics I would need to deliver. However, I came across some advice online that I think has made me rethink this, and I think I'm going to change my goals and approach for my production process. I came across this video by Timothy Cain, who seems to be a veteran of the game development industry, who outlined these game production stages. And in this video, he talks about prototyping, he talks about building out test rooms, moving on to building a vertical slice, and then an alpha, a beta, and then release. And I thought it was really interesting that in his production process, the test rooms was the way to move forward, was to basically build out simulation rooms of individual mechanics in isolation, test those, and then build out the map. In retrospect, that seems like a very smart and clear way to do this. This is how much of software is developed, is to build small things in isolation and then test and iterate. And so I think instead of trying to build out 16 screens of map, what I plan on doing is to build out many of these test rooms. And I've also been working on building some infrastructure to support this, this endeavor. There really is a wealth of knowledge out there if you look for it. Discord, YouTube, your local game community groups. They can be great resources in helping you solve problems you couldn't otherwise. And I would recommend anyone out there who's seeking making games to not work by yourself and to seek out these resources and be with people in order to make a better game. Game development, in my mind, is a community effort. It requires the person making it, people playing your game, giving you feedback from that, and it's also quite a challenging process. So any and all help you can get really should should be leveraged in order to finish. So yeah, that's all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. The next video I plan to do is to start building out some of these test rooms. I have some ideas for mechanics to build out. I also am going to try to make a web build of the game because I have some friends who want to play test this, and I think making a private web build, which I will eventually make available to those on YouTube when it's ready, is also on my agenda. If you found this video interesting, please leave a like. If you want to continue watching the development of this game, please subscribe to this channel. And I'd love to hear from you. What did you think about this style of video? It was a little bit different than the ones I've done before, and I'm just trying to, like my game, iterate on how I deliver content to YouTube. So again, thank you so much for watching. My name is Ev, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.